Samuel Gichuru, for over 20 years, plotted and engineered one of the greatest heists in Kenya. He was the CEO of Kenya Power and Lighting Company from 1983 to 2003. Untouchable at his peak, he greatly benefited from the government's corrupt administration. Together with the former Minister for Energy, they made KPLC their cash cow, milking over 20 billion shillings, plundering power generating projects, and creating powerful cartels. To this day, Kenya has one of the highest power bills, and yet KPLC is a struggling monopoly, making losses and with more liabilities than assets. This is how Samuel Gichuru and cronies fleeced KPLC. Samuel Gichuru was married to one Salome Njeri in December of 1967 somewhere in Nakuru. As a young couple, they had great ambitions of raising a family and succeeding in life. Samuel Gichuru was a lawyer, introverted but sharp, with a witty tongue. Salome Njeri was a teacher and a housewife, raising the couple's 4 kids, Anthony, Mary, Mombi, and Victor. Gichuru started his career in 1968 at Central Rift County Council as an administrative officer. In 1974, he joined KPLC as an assistant company secretary. He moved with his family from Nakuru to Nairobi. He would spend the next 10 years learning the trade, crawling up the corporate ladder, creating contract documents, negotiating deals, and most importantly, getting a cut out of every deal. In 1983, Gichuru was at the helm of KPLC as its managing director. Between 1979 and 1982, Kenya's economy was at a recession, growing at 1.3% per annum. Energy was seen as a key sector to help ameliorate the situation. The Ministry of Energy and the parastatal in charge, KPLC, worked night and day to source and supply more energy to the economy. The ministry would finance the parastatal to research on sites where power generating dams would be built. This would be done via a feasibility study. A feasibility study is an assessment of the practicality of a proposed plan or project. It is a study that analyzes the viability of a project to determine whether the project or venture is likely to succeed. The study is designed to identify potential issues and problems that could arise while pursuing the project. Gichuru saw the potential of making money by overstating the invoice value of the company conducting the studies. He would pocket the excess amount. For years, he would commission a feasibility study, appoint a friendly firm, authorize the payments, and get his cut. And this was the start of an addiction that would last 20 years for Samuel Gichuru. It was Leon F. Seltzer who argued that greed is the ultimate addiction. Nothing tops greed-laden pursuit of wealth in its audacity, manipulativeness, and gross insensitivity to the needs and feelings of others. And to cater for his ballooning appetite, Gichuru's advisors, in an act that was years before its time, advised him to open an offshore account in Jersey Island. This would be a bottomless pit in which he would hide his wealth from the authorities and from his family, especially his wife, in case of a divorce. How to hide your wealth in an offshore tax haven. Jersey, an island in the English Channel, part of the British Isles, is a tax haven loved by many corrupt and wealthy people who wish to hide their wealth. Along with its beautiful beaches and coastal cliffs are buildings that house banks and cabinets that shelve thousands of shell companies. There are lawyers and accountants for hire who, at a fee that only the wealthy can afford, established shell companies, complete with fake directors, fake addresses, but with a real bank account. They establish vertiginal structures that hide the true ownership by obscuring it behind multiple corporate vehicles. The banks in Jersey provide anonymity and accept money without asking questions. The true owners can now deposit as much money into the account and become a wealthy nomad. Their money moves across borders and obey only the laws that favor them. As such, a person could possess and use a property in Kenya which is owned by a shell company in Jersey, thus escaping prosecution and any tax that would accrue from the use of such property. In 1986, Samuel Gichuru formed his first shell company in Jersey, Windward Trading Company. Now, all the kickbacks from the many feasibility studies commissioned by KPLC would be channeled to Jersey Channel Islands HSBC Bank, sort code 402534, account number 427677791 of PO Box 14 St. Helier. Around 1986, Gichuru met a young gorgeous woman who had just started as an apprentice at KPLC. Although she was someone's wife, Gichuru had a strong eye for her. He serenaded her with lavish gifts and treated her in a way that only a millionaire could. Gichuru then hired Bilha Wanjiku Gishuhi as an assistant officer and speedily promoted her to chief manager, human resources. In 1987, Gichuru's wife, Salome, moved back to their Nakuru farm. She had had enough of the CEO's philandering ways. In 1990, Kenya received 8.2 billion shillings from Britain for the Ewasonyero hydropower plant. A British company, Knight Pisold, was awarded by KPLC the contract to carry a feasibility study for the Ewasonyero Dam. This would be the start of a scratch my back, I scratch yours relationship between the farm and the CEO of KPLC, Samuel Gichuru. For the feasibility study alone, Knight Pisold was paid 1.8 billion shillings upfront by KPLC. This was 5 times what a feasibility study should cost. In return, Knight Pisold paid Gichuru 1.5 billion shillings. Not directly to him. The money went through another crooks facilitating company, Kamago. Then it landed in Gichuru's shell company account in Jersey. Between 1991 and 1993, one study showed KPLC conducted 14 feasibility studies, each costing 300 million shillings. In total, Gichuru pocketed 80% of the proceeds as he was fraudulently acting as Knight Pisold's agent. That was 80% of 300 million, each for 14 projects that never took off. Total gain for Gichuru 3.3 billion shillings. In 1998, Ksh20 Okemo was appointed by President Moi into the cabinet as the Minister for Energy. As expected, the minister would be involved in KPLC's activities more as a watchdog than an accomplice. But Ksh20 Okemo was to become the latter, opening his own set of secret accounts in another tax haven, Switzerland. Together, Gichuru and Okemo were unstoppable in their quest to become billionaires. The two-man team would collude to steal. They would single source a foreign company with a project proposal. Ksh20 Okemo would sign a letter of undertaking on behalf of the Kenyan government. The contracted company would then acquire a loan using this letter as a guarantee that the project is genuine. Once the foreign company got the loan, then Gichuru and Okemo would immediately get their cut. In 1999, John Brown Engineering Company was awarded a tender to install a gas turbine for Kenya Power's Kipevu power station. it paid Gichuru and Okemo through Windward Trading Company 67.5 million shillings. When this turbine broke down, the company was asked to reinstall a new one and paid Mr. Gichuru's Windward Trading Company an extra 57 million shillings. Towards the end of 1999, Ksh20's Ksh Okemo was moved from the Ministry of Energy to the Ministry of Finance. This just accelerated the scheme. By the year 2000, Gichuru was a multi-billionaire. He had already spent 18 years at the helm of his cash cow, and although he had separated with his wife and mother of his 4 children, he was now remarried and living with his former mistress, Bilha. His billionaire status was cemented by the following properties: prime properties comprising land and buildings in Nairobi, Mombasa, Nakuru, Tale, Kiambu, Naivasha, Nyahururu, Kitengela, and Mavoko municipality. He had more land in Karen and Mombasa Road, Dolphin Palms in Mombasa, 3 townhouses in Kileleshwa, and 2 flats in Hurlingham. Other properties were in Kuna Estate, Dam Estate, and Spring Valley Estates in Nairobi. He had tracts of agricultural land and prime plots in a number of counties, shares in top-notch companies, accounts in 6 top local banks and abroad, and rent proceeds from houses in leafy city suburbs. It was not until 2003, after the new reform-based government of President Kibaki, that Gichuru retired from the KPLC, ending a 20-year career of mindless plunder. In 2006, in one of the divorce landmark cases in Kenya, Salome Njeri filed to officially divorce Samuel Gichuru for fear that her children would not inherit anything from Gichuru, who had already remarried Bilha Gichuru. It is in that court proceeding that Salome Njeri mentioned one of the overseas accounts in Jersey in the English Channel that held 1.2 billion shillings at the time. That was the strike that opened the Pandora's box. That was how British intelligence officers used some of the affidavits sworn in court during the divorce hearing to piece together bits of one of the most brazen cases of corruption in Kenya. In 2011, the United Kingdom issued a warrant of arrest against Mr. Gichuru and Mr. Ksh Okemo of alleged corruption and money laundering. In 2016, about 500 million of the loot was confiscated by Jersey authorities following the successful conviction of Windward Trading Limited for money laundering offences. The fake directors had pleaded guilty. In 2020, amidst the coronavirus pandemic, some of the confiscated funds were returned to Kenya to help with the fight. Sadly, the woman whose affidavit opened a can of worms, the woman who had long suffered 39 years married to a glutton addict, a mother, a teacher, and an entrepreneur, Salome Njeri, died on 14th May 2010. Today, both Gichuru and Okemo are still working scot-free, an injustice by the Kenyan justice system, as hundreds of thousands suffer the consequences of their corruption. Experience has shown that even under the best forms, those entrusted with power have, in time and by slow operations, perverted it into tyranny. Men and women seek positions thereof in order to loot when expected to serve. Deeply devoted to the shrine of greed, there is no hate they won't climb in order to plunder. And like an incense rising on an altar of evil, the stinking aroma brings together all those with perverted ambitions: tenderpreneurs, government officials, sacred bankers, opportunistic lawyers, and compromised judiciary. This in turn turns a country into a nation of 10 millionaires and 10 million beggars.